Governor Mike DeWine has tested negative once again for the coronavirus after testing positive for COVID-19, and that's fueling speculation about the accuracy of the test and positive cases in the state. Once again, we're joined live by Dr. Amy Edwards, an infectious disease specialist from UH, Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. Doctor, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, we're talking about two tests here. We're talking about an antigen test and a PCR test. Now, which one did the governor get first?
He started with the rapid antigen test and then had two follow-up PCR-based tests.
All right, talk about the differences between these two tests.
So the rapid antigen test looks for antigens, which is protein. The PCR-based test looks for bits of DNA, and the PCR-based test is much more accurate than the antigen-based test.
So the question becomes, why would the governor be tested with a test that's not as accurate?
That's a really great question, and I have that exact same question. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I can only guess they used it for speed, but they sacrificed accuracy, as far as I can tell. I have not been happy with the performance of the rapid test, and in fact, we don't use it at UH because of its problems with performance.
Got it. What about most of the testing being done here in Northeast Ohio? You said you don't use it at UH, but what about around the area? Is it being used a lot here?
I don't think so. That's why I was surprised that that's the test that the governor got, because I wasn't even aware that any of the other medical centers were using it. Now, I don't know who did his test. I don't know if it was one of the medical centers or if the White House brought them or how that works. But as far as I'm aware, none of the medical centers are using the rapid antigen test.
Should people be concerned about the reliability of the two tests? So a lot of people are saying, okay, how do I know? I don't have the luxury of being tested again. So should people be concerned?
Well, I mean, doctors from the beginning have been saying that we're struggling with the testing around coronavirus. The FDA was very quick to issue emergency use authorizations for the tests because we needed some form of testing. But now, as things have gone on and we have more time, the FDA really needs to start tightening up their regulation around these tests, and most of the PCR-based tests are performing really, really well as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
But some of these rapid tests, they're not up to snuff.
So that could affect the numbers as far as coronavirus cases. And am I right or wrong about that?
Yes, especially if a lot of people are relying on the rapid test. As I said, I didn't think a lot of people were. I think most of the hospitals are relying on the PCR-based test, but I don't know about some of these pop-up centers.
I want to switch gears now and talk about the fact that fall sports may be canceled. What's your take on that?
Oh, I think it's very sad. I wish, we could have some of that type of stuff, but, people, there's just too much virus in circulation, I think, to make it safe right now. Maybe if the numbers go down, people could get a few events in here and there, but it's just not safe right now.
One final question, Doctor. What are you hearing as far as a possible vaccine?
So there's I think 5 or 6 vaccines that have completed phase 1 trials and have moved to phase 2 trials. There's a couple that I think the data looks really good on. So I'm very hopeful that we'll get at least a couple of working vaccines. But these phase 2 and phase 3 trials are the big ones, and that will really tell us if these vaccines are effective.
All right, Dr. Amy Edwards from University Hospitals. I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning, bringing us up to date.
Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.